All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Sobrato, Senior Associate Director at CFPIC, and I'm joined by my colleagues Laura Kwiswicki and Peter Guan, who will speak a little bit later, and you'll see them in chat this morning. Welcome to the second session in our year-long series designed to support county system of care teams as they build effective cross-system care continuums for children, youth, and families. This series is designed for full interagency teams as each system partner's investment of time, resources, attention, and collaboration is critical, especially now with the new initiatives and opportunities and even mandates that require full team participation in order for them to be successful. I'd like to take a moment to thank our incredible work group for their support in designing the content for today, as well as the overall layout of the cascading topics for us to focus on this next year. And if I put all their individual names on a slide, it would be too long. But we started with our strong CFPIC consultant team and added the great support of our state AB 2083 joint resolution team, which carries the legislative responsibility for ensuring and supporting local system of care implementation. We also had representation from the state agencies and all the associations which represent local system of care members. And those are the County Welfare Directors Association, the County Behavioral Health Directors Association, the Chief Probation Officers of California, and the Association for Regional Center Agencies. And in a few moments, I'll introduce our presentation team who will represent that work group. So our first session last June focused on the importance of authentic relationships between program and fiscal and strategies for setting out both relational and organizational pathways for shared fiscal planning and collaboration across the county system of care team. Our content today is designed to build upon that. We'd like to underscore family, community, and system collaboration as the vehicle for centering every child's need for connection and well-being, no matter what systems are serving a child and no matter the need. We'll talk today about what it means to be a whole child ecosystem builder and how two big initiatives within the governor's master plan for kids' mental health, the CYBHI, and community schools can be important building blocks. We will also, and this will be the best part of the morning, we will also spotlight some very real stories from two counties, Sacramento and Calaveras. We're going to get to hear exactly, with some detail, how they mobilized their partnerships to share responsibility for coordinating priority attention and care for youth who needed support from multiple agencies. And every county's context is different, but still, we hope you will see yourself in those stories and reflect on all that you are building in your own county. And finally, we're going to share about a system of care coordination tool that will provide placement options, information about placement options and resources across the 5 system of care agencies. We are going to be giving that tool away. We'll be doing so. Watch your email. We may even facilitate a few webinars to just give it away and make sure that we are providing enough technical assistance for how to use it. But we are so excited to provide that tool and put that in your hands in the next couple of weeks. We're also going to talk about ongoing support that is always available for your county system of care team, provided by the CFPIC consultants steeped in county experience across a number of systems. And I should say that while our TA team is quite robust, we are not the only entity providing some great TA to local system of care teams. I'd like to acknowledge the wonderful TA that the state's joint resolution team is already providing to county teams, either directly or in partnership with UC Davis, as well as the groundbreaking work that Breaking Barriers has undertaken for the past decade, led by Elizabeth Estes and the array of TA consultants available through her. So we're essentially adding to that contingency our own team of consultants who are also available immediately, funded by Child Welfare Realignment and made possible by CWDA. And now I have the privilege of recognizing our esteemed presentation team today, and you will notice that each system partner is represented. You'll get to hear from Richard Connect from the Integrated Human Services Group, Mike Lombardo, the Senior Advisor to Education and Human Services, and he will provide our overview of CYBHI. And you'll get to hear from Mike Wimberly and John Osis, both from the California Department of Education, and Leah Dempsey from the California Department of Developmental Services, Sarah Rogers from the California Department of Social Services, Jody Langs from the County Behavioral Health Association, and Stephanie Anderson from the Chief Probation Officers of California, Rachel Swakos representing Child Welfare Services, and Susan Lowell representing the County Welfare Directors Association. Today, you will get to hear briefly from each of them as they describe their system's array of trauma-informed services and supports and how their resources add to the local continuum organized around the children and youth's need for connection and well-being. And while you will hear lots of voices today from different disciplines, I hope you will hear one resounding message: that organizational and relational partnerships must be stronger than the silos and barriers that exist between them. And as we begin today, on behalf of CFPIC and our work group and presenters, it is with profound appreciation and the deepest respect for the common ground that we all stand on together. You would not be here today if you didn't share in the activated commitment to your community's children and youth, fueled by hope that each child in your community would grow up in a loving, caring family or permanent connection, well supported within a robust and trauma-informed ecosystem of care. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Richard Connect, who's going to ground us in some foundational principles, and then he'll pass it off to Mike Lombardo, and we'll get to hear a little bit more about CYBHI. Richard, take it away.
Andrea, thanks so much and good morning. Really appreciate the chance to share some time with you all. I see lots of familiar faces and names joining today. It's great to be with other system integration champions, and thank you to CFPIC for hosting and organizing the event. Super excited to be with you. I get to share a little bit about the context and the reason for integration, and so I'm going to jump right in. We use this word often in health and human services and associated areas, integration, and I think often it's undervalued and underappreciated. What's critical to recognize is that while we are involved in the role and opportunity to help people be whole and well, particularly children in the context of their families, the system we work in is not yet whole and not well. And until we can integrate and make the system whole, it's very difficult to sustainably, consistently, effectively help people who've been traumatized experience that wellness. In other words, you can't give what you don't possess. And as healers, we don't possess the wholeness and the integration necessary. Part of the problem is that we tend to think and see in separateness. We see our money and our policy and our facilities and all those things in silos. And there are gaps in the system. This is the fragmentation that is present in the system we've designed and all grown up in the last 4 or 5 decades in California and even beyond, right? This is a national issue. All of that is an anathema to integration. In California, we have these amazing reform opportunities, and you're going to hear Mike talk about a couple of these in detail, but there are numerous others. And each of those reform opportunities comes with tremendous opportunity and obligation. We're all holding the weight for that as leaders in systems. The reality is those reform opportunities will largely go unrealized, certainly not maximally effective, unless we figure out the integration imperative. There's a ton of evidence for this. We don't have time today to dive into it, but many reform efforts over the last 50 years in California have not met the mark because we haven't invested in the integration itself. So there's a lot to do. I have this great opportunity to work with many of you and others in local communities striving for this integration and focusing on the vision, the structure, the functionality of the system, if you will. And there are opportunities present within those reform efforts, particularly Assembly Bill 2083, which you're going to hear me highlight a little bit, that give us this amazing opportunity to adapt that and bring structure and functionality to those reform efforts to maximize them. So you're going to hear me talk about that for the next few minutes as we kind of lean in then to hearing stories from Calaveras and Sacramento. Um, Adaptation is necessary, super critical. We have to take the tools that are available to us, including system of care, including other reform efforts, and we have to adapt them locally if we're going to make them maximally effective. Thanks, Peter. The reality underscoring all of this is that no single agency or department has sufficient expertise, capacity, or resources on their own. But together, we've got, in some ways, more than enough often. Fiscal scarcity, informational scarcity, those things are real, but we can mitigate them when we are in highly collaborative, integrated environments. And that's the essence of a good functioning system of care. Um, Also important to recognize that there are significant redundancies between and across the systems. These redundancies involve organizations chasing the same data, often competing for the same money, sharing the same workspace or facilities, but not even knowing it sometimes. We train to things like motivational interviewing in various sectors, and sometimes in the same county, we do MI training as an example, and departments don't even know that they've done MI training, right, for other departments. So there's this tremendous redundancy and inefficiency in the system. And the reality is that those inefficiencies bleed into how we work with kids and families. So that kids have to go through multiple assessments. We often have multiple service plans, right? Those inefficiencies cost us and the kids and families we're serving. And we got to fix that. That's the essence of the integration imperative. Next slide, Peter. There are some fundamental kind of universal purposes to integration, and these involve authentically and fully seeing, experiencing, understanding the needs of youth within their environment and their relationship to caregivers. This involves and invites us to recognize that the system we design and that we're trying to integrate has to be based in the needs of the young person and their family, not in the needs the system has created for itself. Think about that. That's the fundamental paradox that we all live in, is that we operate in systems that are designed to meet the needs of the system, not the needs of kids and families most often. Well-being, recovery, and support services that are efficient, effective, accessible, culturally humble, all those things come with a good system of care. There's evidence for that. We'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. The essential role of an integrated system is to promote connection and well-being. Again, you can't give what you don't possess. And if we are not connected, if we are not in a place of well-being with our partners, it's not going to work to try to serve kids. And lots of evidence for this, again, as we've talked about. So visually, really quickly, one of the ideas that resonates with me and I think others is this idea of recognizing that while we are in agencies and departments, organizations that are distinct from one another in how they execute their healing functions, we are not separate. Separateness is an illusion. And the universe invites us to recognize this in lots of different ways and places. We won't talk about those today, but it's a universal imperative that we recognize that separateness is an illusion. It's a myth. And the more we can strive to understand the important distinctions that are in code and statute, but that don't drive us to separation necessarily, the better we can pursue this idea of integration. Next slide. A number of years ago, I had this realization that part of my own journey to collective impact and to integration was to recognize that if it's true that we are distinct and not separate, then we are not operating in separate systems, plural. We are operating in one system. And so I have taken to referring to the work that we do collectively as the system work. And it invites me kind of cognitively, intellectually, to recognize that that disparateness, that distinction is navigable. We can mitigate it. We can bring the parts of the system together and create truly a singularity to how we work with kids and families. Next slide. A second imperative within that is not only to see the system as whole and complete and appreciate it that way in our own minds, but to understand that to do the integration work, the rules of the system can't be more important than the relationships that heal. Not only the relationships we have with one another, but the relationships that our healing personnel have with kids and families, right? For way too long, part of the fragmentation of the system has been that we we pay more attention to the guardrails along the highway than we do to the highway and the journey itself. And that's fundamentally flawed, right? Like the system wasn't created to comply with itself. But that's often what it feels like working in large public systems, even in private healthcare. Folks we work with that doing private health and human services work feel the impact of this. So we have to discipline ourselves to recognize that the relationships have to be as or more important than the rules. The collective impact research, which underscores system of care and is kind of baked into AB 2083, which we'll get to in just a second, suggests that a healing system has to migrate, adapt, disrupt itself in three fundamental ways. We have to have an alignment of vision. We have to have a singular structure, a backbone that's shared, and we have to have functions and processes identified that link us together in that integration. We're pretty good in government historically about doing the vision piece. We come together, we identify a problem, we do needs assessments, and we say, that's the problem, and thank you, legislature, let's throw $4 billion at that problem. And those dollars go into a silo, historically anyway, into a silo, and one aspect of the system is expected to fix the problem. And that's just not possible. And again, evidence is significant for that. So what we invite ourselves to in thinking about system of care writ large and integration is that leaders have to pay attention to vision, structure, and function simultaneously. These are related to one another. The functions won't be linked. Things like sharing information, things like maximizing our revenues, ensuring that we can cross-train when needed, which is super critical to things like consistent teaming, right? To the use of the IP cans in California. We should be cross-training in every environment to IP cans. Those kinds of examples, those are the functions that reinforce the vision. The vision reinforces the functions reinforce the vision, the structure holds it all together. That structure is captured within your memorandum of understanding and your interagency leadership team process. So I hope you can see the interconnectivity and the tools that are present that are baked into the system of care work under AB 2083 and how that can be the structure through which we do other reforms like you're going to hear about today. Next slide. So would invite you to just reflect for a moment or two, and would love to see some of you in chat. Take a minute and just drop in there a few quick words around what makes a system whole. Like, tell us, give us some feedback about what you're doing locally. What are the functions that you do that are with another department, another agency, another organization that fosters or creates this kind of singularity, right? This oneness of vision, function, and structure. Where are you pursuing uniformity of purpose, function, or vision? Love to see some reflections in chat, and we'll pop in here and take some feedback on this. Appreciate those of you who are pondering on this and helping us kind of call out what these might be. Thanks, Monica. Yeah, relationships critical, right? And we've made that point. And often it's the relationships that will hold us through the difficult moments of adaptation because it's very hard work. You're in the midst of hard work now, and there are budget crises in most departments or agencies, right? And often the tendency for leaders is when there's a budget crisis, we take our toys and we flee the sandbox because we have to protect jobs or functionality. And so it's the relationships that will hold us into the oneness through those difficult moments. I see someone referencing a universal release of information. Thanks, Michelle. Tuolumne County, right? Been one of the pioneers of trying to solve the HIPAA FERPA issues by figuring out locally how are we going to talk to each other in a most efficient way possible, and we do that through a singular release of information. So a great example of a functional problem being addressed by the system together, right? And kind of cleaving to and implementing solutions that work for everybody. Brenda, thanks. The core values and principles, we won't talk about that a lot today, but it brings me to the integrated core practice model. One of these unique tools that's associated with the system of care work is ICPM, wherein you'll find a common universal evidence-based set of language, principles, values, and the behaviors uniquely in California that inform how we do the work based in our values, right? Fantastic. Appreciate all of those reflections in chat, all truths. Thank you so much. All right. To dive a little bit into the technical aspects of this, the system of care as it's captured in AB 2083 is rooted in research, and the research suggests from 45, 46 years of federal study that we're striving to create a broad, flexible array of services that's organized and coordinated, that integrates care planning and management across the system and up and down multiple levels, right? Policy, management, practice, community levels. And that it's supported by, there's that word, structure at the end, right? The thing about this definition is it's beautiful, it's comprehensive, it's informed by research, but I can never remember all those words. But what I can remember, the 4 R's of the system, and that's organizations understanding if I can share resources, responsibility, risk, and reward, I can build a system of care. And so everything I do every day, I go into work saying to myself, how am I going to share any of the 4 R's with my partners in other departments, other agencies today? And soon I begin to recognize that everything I do can be enhanced or maximized if I'm thinking about how do I share it with another department or agency. And you're going to hear Mike talk about a couple of really great examples here in a minute or two. Next slide, Peter, thanks. My favorite slide, some of you have seen this because we've come into it often lately in a lot of environments. To boil this down, really what interagency leaders have to do is pay attention to critical conditions. And this comes to us courtesy the wraparound folks, and we've kind of sprinkled a little bit of dust from the National Implementation Research folks at the University of North Carolina. And so we borrowed wraparound implementation science and some collective impact in California's system of care. And if interagency leaders can pay attention to these functions in the green box on the left, right? The hospitable conditions. How do we share information? How do we maximize our revenues? How do we cross-train? How do we co-locate? These are the things baked into your MOU. If we do these things consistently over time with integrity, then virtually any implementation or reform work, any implementation of an evidence-based practice, any new money, any new grant, whatever the opportunity is, can be maximized and will be maximized because we are paying attention to those conditions, which lets us take full advantage of the opportunity. Otherwise, we are stuck in a hamster wheel of implementation in a silo, which is why our dollars are never enough and why our obstacles persist after decades of trying to solve them, because we haven't invested in the hospitality of the conditions of the environment, right? Okay, next slide. I mentioned earlier there's evidence for system of care. What's unique about this is a partial list of more than 50 outcomes or outputs of systems of care which have been studied across the country, right? And the reason these are important is that the thing I'd like for you to take away from this is none of these impacts, and some of these are substantive, none of these impacts occurred with more money. SAMHSA, under the system of care work, has not endowed direct dollars for services. They do that in other areas, but not system of care. These system of care outcomes have come from one thing and one thing only. They built the collaborative. They built the structure. They held the vision over time. And after 6, 7, 8 years, they began to note, look at our outcomes just from being in a sharing environment with other organizations, right? So think about that. The reform works we're trying to do now, it's not about money alone. It's about, can we do the sandbox work? Can we figure out the collective? Next slide. Here's a partial look at some of the reform work. You're going to hear Mike talk in some detail about a couple of these. But translating then the penultimate slide, the hospitable conditions, right? If you take that idea and you insert any reform into that, and you support that with a relationally based core practice model like we have in California, you will get better outcomes. It's guaranteed. This is science, all right? I mean, we use that word loosely, but it applies here. If we can do what's in the system of care MOU with integrity, fidelity over time, and we can then be positioned to maximize these and other reform opportunities, and we can get off the hamster wheel and start getting really much better consistent outcomes for kids and families across the system. Next slide. So I'm going to begin to transition here and just kind of tie up my context setting and this framing for why a relationally based system of care is critical. Leaders within your ecosystem, your system of care writ large, are focused on critical things like developing awareness that their interdependent needs with other departments and agencies are critical, right? Like we think oneness, we think usness, not me and you, not you and me, but us, right? We understand that our own scarce financial resources within our own departments are best mitigated in partnership. I've had this privilege of watching many of you come into ILT environments and say, I got a problem. I'm going to have to cut this program. What can we do? And I've seen partners step up and say, you know what, let's not let that happen. I've got a couple of bucks over here. I got a person over here, right? I'll loan you this person for a year, right? Like there are ways to mitigate and create the consistency and sustainability. And that's what the system builders focus on. Third thing is we develop responsibility and accountability with our peers. So we model for them accountability rather than holding them to accountability. I bring my own accountability into this ILT environment or my advisory team environment every single month. I identify myself communicationally as being system affiliated. So I'm no longer the chief probation officer in some settings. I'm no longer the director of child welfare. I am one leader among many in my community concerned with the well-being and safety of my young people, right? I see myself as a part of the system. I can communicate to people. This is my primary role to be a system leader, right? I look to develop and nurture interagency relationships toward one whole system. One of my fondest memories from my time, my decade in Placer, was routine breakfast meals with the presiding bench officer. About once a month or so, we would meet, and she would inform me about what was working in the system, and we did a lot of listening and took feedback from her, and it was that relationship of trust where she could tell me and my management team, like, where do we need you to get better, Richard? And thank you for doing this work in this way. Those informal relationships, those opportunities are what will hold us again through difficult cycles of change and adaptation. Finally, what great leaders in systems of care do is we keep the focus on the connection and well-being, right? And we don't get lost in the compliance. It's important. Compliance matters. The code, the statute, the prescription matters, but nobody ever got better because of a compliance aspect. That's a way to address the system's needs. They are important because you'll get in trouble if you break the law, right? Like no one's suggesting you break the rules. We're just suggesting that that formula that overemphasizes the rules and compromises our ability to be in relationship with each other and with kids and families, we have to address that. And the system is the best way to help us mitigate that. All right. Next slide. Really happy to yield to my friend, longtime thought partner, and teammate Mike Lombardo, who's going to talk about a couple of places where the system of care work dovetails, meets beautifully with some other opportunities that help us reform the system writ large. Michael?
Great. Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate everything you've said. And we're going to kind of dive into now two of the governor's master plan for children initiatives that Andrea was mentioning. One, the Children Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, as well as community schools. And I warn you, it is a fire hose of information that I'm about to give you. My hope is that you get a couple nuggets that you can follow up on with your community partners or with me or with the center after hearing my section of this presentation and all the following ones. So kicking it off, reiterating what Richard said, this is a quote from Dr. Sunny Patel that resonates a lot with me, is children have integrated needs and our current systems are siloed. And I know and I recognize some of the people on this call today are from some pretty advanced systems of care. Some of you are starting that journey now, or your 2083 journey now, but that on whole, we still, even in the most advanced systems, are somewhat structurally siloed. Next slide, please. We look like this sometimes, where we have children, families, or health maintenance organizations sitting outside of our 2083 ILT or our system of care, where county services are sometimes isolated still from school services, where school-based mental health isn't talking to county behavioral health, or where schools supports and prevention don't talk even within the school system to more intensive services, and community-based agencies sometimes are held on the outside of schools. And I think this is an opportunity for us to rethink, or the governor's master plan is to rethink those services and get across the sidewalk or break down that barrier to collaboration that sometimes is keeping us structurally siloed. Peter? So it looks like this sometimes, where county systems, community schools, and CYBHI are sitting on one side, and family, community, youth are on another. I'm not sure the slide's going to work, but if we advanced it, you would see it did work. Integrated system of support, that we want to have an integrated tiered system of support. So start thinking about not just integration, and Richard mentioned it briefly, but how do we organize what we do for all children? The next slide shows this really well. Or I also, in a couple of slides, I'll bring this up again. So the governor's master plan for children, CYBHI, is included. It's a $4.7 billion initiative to really reimagine and transform the way that we work with children. Their goal is to do that where children are at, in communities, in schools, to reimagine a more integrated, youth-centered, and equitable program, making services more accessible for children and families. Promoting things like the multi-payer fee schedule, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which equalizes services, increase in mental health and substance abuse services. It's really built on the foundation of equity and accessibility for young people, or for all. Next slide, please. So to think about the governor's collective vision to support children and youth, knowing that they are struggling, and more so than ever, I'm here in Humboldt County today doing site visits, and an interesting phenomena at a school site earlier today. All these middle school children are having big needs, Michael. And when you track back to when COVID happened, the middle schoolers were in second and third grade. So they really missed a lot of social integration. Now they're getting from second and third grade to middle school today, having big behaviors because they haven't, they're really struggling due to COVID. So we're still seeing that in a lot of communities, especially rural communities. So the governor's hope is to value the whole child in an equity-centered way to wrap around the child. The state realized that we need to work with current initiatives like integrated systems framework or multi-tier systems of support, community schools, and PBIS. And I'm going to show you today some of the interface between community schools and PBIS, and as well as the core practice model. Next slide. So I call this the placemat. It's not necessarily what the state calls it, but it looks like a placemat to me of 27 work streams within that $4.7 billion. We're going to jump into the multi-payer fee schedule. I notice there's an error on this. It says the all payer, but it's a multi-payer system of support through DHCS. But the fee schedule is organized through workforce training and capacity, behavioral health ecosystem and infrastructure, coverage, and awareness. So the CYBHI work streams, all 27 of them, are organized into these 4 pillars. Next slide. Everybody wants to know about the fee schedule. That's the big news. There's lots of parts of CYBHI. I don't have day to go into those with you, but please circle back and check out the CYBHI fee website. But the fee schedule is organized. Those of you in our behavioral health departments are familiar with the procedure codes and service categories. And this is just an example where we have case management under procedure code 99366. The service description of what you can do. So for face-to-face services, these new people can do this in the fee schedule, from PPS credentialed people, LCSW people, LMFTs, school psychologists, school counselors, and there's a wellness coach fee schedule as well, at a rate of 3671 reimbursement for that 30 minutes. So this is an opportunity to help sustain some of the services that we've been doing. And quite frankly, to have the payers who should be paying for these services, our insurance system, both Medi-Cal and commercial insurance, reimburse schools or reimburse providers or affiliate providers who are doing these services. So it's a way of expanding the workforce and those services being paid through the insurance providers. Next slide, please. So the scope of service that's covered under the multi-payer fee schedule, we can do psychoeducation, case management, screening and assessment, and therapy type services. These services have to be school-based or school-linked/school referred, so connected to school sites. I was speaking with someone earlier today, and they said, well, we go out in this county, we have to go out and pick kids up for school. And sometimes we have these conversations on the way to school that look a lot like case management. Can we bill for that? Yes, it doesn't have to happen on the school campus. It literally could happen on windshield time on the way to and from school too. So there's opportunities to fit it in to services, just school-based and school-linked. Next slide. I put this in here to illustrate the interface with specialty mental health services, and it confuses some of our communities. Well, where does CYBHI fit? CYBHI multi-payer fee schedule is intended for mild to moderate services, whereas we still have a lot of students who are receiving specialty mental health services. It is not intended to replace specialty mental health, but this illustration shows how they could coexist or or integrate together in a coordinated way. And I think that is again an example of what Richard was talking about, the interface of placing the fee schedule, and I'll show you community schools in a moment, in the center of that hospitable environment where we can work together and support creatively these services to happen, or an expansion of services, even in this time where some of us are facing budget deficits. Next slide, please. So it can look something like this. So now I'm speaking to those of you who are more familiar with schools. We organize everything in our brains through a multi-tiered system of support or a public health model. Tier 1, what do we do for all kids? What's the universal support? At Tier 2, what do we do, or what are supplemental supports for small groups of students and children? And what are the most intensive supports? So thinking about this, and specialty mental health would certainly fall in the top Tier 3 section of this illustration, whereas mild to moderate falls within the Tier 2 and Tier 1 services. But again, I want to illustrate that these work together, and that's why there's an imperative to grow our 2083 team. Richard said something yesterday and again today that I want to punctuate. We want to be able to coordinate and collaborate to make the most effective and efficient use of resources in that hospitable environment. And the ILT, or expansion of 2083, I'm going to go out maybe even on a ledge and say it is an imperative for counties to do, because the only way to maximize these services is honestly in creating that integrated system of support. Next slide. So what does it look like? You're probably not going to be able to see these slides too well if you have eyes like mine, old eyes like mine. But what I wanted to show you is the possibility of a licensed clinical social worker who's doing these activities. On the left side, you see our familiar procedure code. You can then see the activities, and I'll go through the first one, procedure code for case management services. Per an hour, if you multiply that half hour I showed you earlier, if they do 45 minutes with the midpoint roll, it ends up being $73.42 per hour, or 46 minutes rather. You see where I illustrate there's one FTE. So if that one FTE did just 20% of their time, which is 1 day a week, it's 8 hours a week, The yearly reimbursable would be $25,000. So these are largely dollars that are not going collected right now in the exclusion of the fee schedule. So now we have an opportunity to do that and maximize it under an integrated system. So in this example, if this individual is doing 45% of their time, which I think is a reasonable expectation, that's 18 hours of the person's 40-hour week. The reimbursement would be $74,000, almost two-thirds of the cost. And I put a cost here of this individual of $130,000, which is rough, depending on where you are in the state. That's salaries and benefits. So I need to make sure I point out that this is an example. It's not an exhaustive list, and we need to get more detailed, and we can do that with you. I have this spreadsheet available. I'm willing to have a conversation with any of you on the call and go a little deeper into this. Next slide, please. Just another example of a wellness coach, that new profession that I talked about. In here, you can see the three categories for a wellness coach. I'm going to skip through this for the sake of time, but you can see that in this example of a wellness coach, if they do just 35% of their time on the fee schedule, it's $58,000 of a possible $87,000 salary. We're only $20,000 away from this vital part of an expansion of our workforce. So this is totally doable in the fee schedule. DHCS and Autumn Boylan will say, let's just get started somewhere, at least do some reimbursement to build that fluency. And I totally agree with that and believe that. Next slide. So some state data. I'm going to actually skip over this slide for the sake of time, but essentially, the fee schedule has been going north. People have been getting reimbursed. It's increasing every week. I can't even keep up with the data now because more and more people are joining the fee schedule. So one way to help integrate or rethink how do we work together on these two initiatives of the governor's master plan is to think about community schools. And visiting a community school today, one of the topics that came up was, how do we fund this, Michael? By integrating with the fee schedule, by integrating even better within that hospitable environment. So a community school, and you'll hear more about it from my friends at CDE, is an integrated place of support services for students. It's a place where collaborative leadership practices for educators and administrators can happen. It's a place where we work with families more intentionally or intently and do home visits and culturally responsive supports, getting across the sidewalk, expand in learning and time and opportunities for students. And you can link to that when you get the copy of the PowerPoint. Next slide. So what's interesting about what I said about CYBHI, about community schools, we start thinking about the core practice model. And Richard mentioned this earlier. And I'm not going to do this in the chat, but I think every single one of these bullets matches with what we're trying to do in CYBHI, what we're trying to do in community schools, and honestly, probably what we're trying to do in lots of other state initiatives right now. So why not rethink how we go about our work and work more intentionally and build those ILTs? I noticed through the corner of my eye that Don Smith was on this call today from Orange County Mental Health Department, Behavioral Health Services, and they're doing a phenomenal job. Shout out to Orange County and building that ILT partnership to think about how do we tuck all of these things and work and create a more hospitable environment. Next slide, please. So strategies to fund these integrated efforts. Andre asked me just to put a few. These are some of the initiatives. It's such a brief list of how to work as an integrated system and using CYBHI, enhanced care management. I won't get into today, but this is why we need our managed care partners at the table. Families First Prevention Services Act, which is tucked under our social services efforts. Early childhood supplemental funds are available for 0 to 5. BHSA is being reimagined as well, and there's on the edge of new opportunities for BHSA as we work together. Next slide, please. Okay, so toward equitable and collaborative solutions, I'm not going to spend any time here, but just to say that 2083 is an opportunity to help reform and create that environment that Richard so eloquently talked about. Next slide. So, in brief, we've been doing this work through CYBHI with the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative called Transforming Together. I encourage you to go to a working paper that we were commissioned to write on how do experts and families and youth see the system. And if you download this paper, you'll see on the next slide what children and youth said about the system. Peter, is that we tend to be even still structurally siloed. And then if we can move even beyond collaboration to better integration, we'll have more robust community involvement, shared vision. We'll get there. We'll start to realize that plan of having an integrated services. And one way we're doing that is through Transforming Together. On the next slide. It looks something like this, where we're taking CCS PP, community schools, blending it with CYBHI in a way to integrate those services. And you'll see on the next slide, we're doing that here in Humboldt. That's why we're here today and tomorrow. Alameda, Fresno, and Imperial. These were 4 selected demonstration sites to look at how can we do this work and really move beyond the work in paper. Richard, I, and several other colleagues are working to write a program guide for implementing integrated services. In large part, integration has been left to purveyors or leaders, and there hasn't been an integrated program guide. That's what we're doing under Transforming Together. A couple quick examples of what this looks like in the next 2 slides. We've roadmapped what's happening already. I can send you a link to these. So the big picture here is the dark blue line is where we're most integrated, and the checkered lines are where we're least integrated, where we have some connection with others. But in reality, in systems that I've been involved with, if you don't have structures in place as we were describing, it tends to be very relational. So I might know Peter, who works at the County Office of Ed, and I'm always going to go to him for everything. I might ignore this wider field of vision. And so we tend to go to people we know, which is another reason of creating that integrated leadership group with members from multiple agencies, all the way down to school site and cost teams. So we can expand our field of vision away from one system. Just the last 2 examples of Fresno and Imperial, who are working very hard to look at what do we currently have in place and where can we increase or make those lines more solid. Thank you all so much for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah from Department of Social Services, who's going to dive deeper for us. I appreciate you all being here. Sarah?
Good morning, almost afternoon. Sarah Rogers with CDSS System of Care branch and also part of the 2083 System of Care state level team. Just really want to offer our department's commitment and support for everything that we are talking about here. We really recognize that our system cannot meet the needs of our children and families without this comprehensive lens. And I think we really can see with that presentation just how much is happening. And so here I just wanted to talk very briefly about another set of initiatives that many of us from the Child Welfare Lens are familiar with, but that are totally dependent on everything else we just learned about to be successful. So here we have our new tiered foster care rate structure that was just recently passed in the legislature that will take effect very, very soon in 2027. And it really represents a transformational approach to how we support children and families, trying to separate out those intensive levels of support from a placement orientation and really create the opportunity for this set of resources to then be integrated and connected into the rest of the system of care. That is the fundamental vision here that you see reflected. We have an investment in strength building and maintenance that allows for children and families to identify extracurricular and enrichment activities that mean something to them. And then we have an immediate needs program that is founded on a model of high fidelity wraparound that we think is really the foundational infrastructure for how this rate structure would tie into all of that, the rest of that network of support that Mike and Richard just described, as well as many other types of supports. And so this is just and we have a care and supervision rate also that allows for a high level of care and supervision for children, even when they're in a family setting. So this allows children to really stay in their community, and it allows the entire system of support to think completely differently about how we partner to respond to the child-specific needs in a family setting and at the very, very local level, rather than children having to move across county lines in order to get the care they need. And so implementing this is going to require all of us to partner. Please, next slide. So here is why we all really have to partner. Here is a slide that really just seeks to demonstrate the vision for the immediate needs program as a high fidelity wraparound model. What this represents is that these children that we are trying to serve, these higher levels of need, really are extremely dependent on the connectivity of all of these resources. And all of the work we've done on implementation has very much confirmed the interdependence of each of these little boxes of support and more into that very child-centered, family-focused intervention, which is the high fidelity wrap model of care. The intent is not that wraparound, the immediate needs program wraparound model provides everything, but rather that it is a centralizing backbone to bring all this together. But again, it cannot be successful without the proactive planning and partnership that is reflective of all those other interventions and other large-scale initiatives that are also trying to impact the lives of our children and the outcomes of our children and families. And so we'll just go to the next slide. I know we don't have a lot of time together, and apologies for the wonkiness of this slide. We'll get it fixed. But this is something that we really feel is a roadmap for how the complex interdependent systems can really come together in a accountable, child-centered way, where we're understanding that a child exists within a 24/7 daily social environment, and that the role of the system of care is really to understand that child's experience of either danger or signals of care or trauma within that 24/7 daily environment, and that the role of each of our systems is to ensure that we understand a child's needs in the context of that 24/7 environment. And so what you see here is you have most of a child's experience being at home, at school, with some aspects in between. And so we offer this roadmap as a way to get really accountable to the real life 24/7 experience of a family, and asking the question of how the formal system of care service plans, the IEPs, the IPPs, the child welfare case plan, the mental health treatment plan, how do they coalesce to be accountable to this 24/7 reality and to help the people who are closest to the child really heal and be supported within that daily environment. And so this is simply a way that we hope can expand how we would traverse these system designs into kind of a reality of children. And so we don't have a lot of time to spend on this. I just really quickly wanted to make that touch point to what Mike Lombardo and Richard were describing. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to stand right on the point you just made. This is a great graphic that talks about the coordination and the commitment and the responsibility of each system to surround that child and advance that child connection and well-being. And I am so excited today. I would love to welcome each of our system partners at the statewide level to talk, sort of touch the maypole. They're going to each spend about 3 minutes and talk about their service array and express their commitment to the full participation in system of care. So we're going to hear that. And I think it's sort of symbolic that they're all here and they're all going to talk about the same thing, how their system advances child connection and well-being. And then we're going to turn to counties and take a look at how that has been operationalized at the local level and the difference that collaboration is making for kids. We're going to see what it looks like and the difference that it has made. And so that is going to be the sort of the punctuation point of our webinar this morning. So before we get to the counties, help me welcome each of our state partners. Mike Wimberly, I'm going to turn it over to you first from the Department of Education.
Thank you very much. And thanks for advancing the slide. I'm Michael Wimberly from the Department of Education. I'm here with my colleague, John Osis. We support the system of care and education, and what we focus on is a whole child. A youth spends half the waking hours in school. And to be able to connect the services within school to the services outside of school, and Sarah made a great mention of what does it look like for a 24-hour day for a youth. And oftentimes when we work with youth on calls and we're talking to counties, it's important for a youth that has had multiple placements, has changed schools, to understand what their day looks like. And so how do we care for them? How do we provide services to them? How do we coordinate services within school and outside of school? So we have a few programs and supports that John and I are going to talk about. And one of the first ones is the FYSCP, or Foster Youth Services Coordinator Program. Now, this is managed through the counties, and they're kind of the county main person in education that coordinates services for the foster youth. But they work with foster youth services liaisons, which are at the district level, which are closer to children, to youth. And so they coordinate things like education, transfer of records. They work with community-based organizations to provide services. They coordinate tutoring. And this is all to help foster youth as they transition to a new school environment or as they need services, so that they have one point of contact to go ahead and help them through their day. There's also expanded learning. Expanded learning provides those opportunities and programs and funding for after school, summer school, enrichment programs, and transitional kindergarten. And it helps with socialization of youth. It helps to give them an environment that it develops academics, social, emotional, physical need. And so it's another program that really, next slide, thanks. That really helps support the youth from PK to 6th grade. And then one of the things that we're excited about, and Michael mentioned, is community schools. Community schools is really focused on the whole youth. It's an initiative that we're really focused on. And John and I have been working with the division that oversees that program to really coordinate it and show the connection with system of care. And so it provides the supports and it looks at the whole child. It strengthens the family, community foundations, sustain mental and behavioral health through healing-centered practices, social emotional learning, and restorative justice. And so this is looking at the whole child, and it's looking at the whole family and providing those supports. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we're going to talk about a couple of other services. Pardon me. Special education. Special education is one of the programs that I focus on. I have experience in special education, and as an aside note, I have a child with special needs. And so one of the main keys in special education is it does individual education programs, or IEP, 504s, and it outlines and documents the related services for the youth that follow them throughout school. And it's important to have that, especially for youth that change schools. An IEP is in effect until a new one's completed. So the services are seamless and continued from school to school if they happen to change schools. And it outlines things like occupational therapy, any academic supports, any counseling. And then when we talk about a youth, we try to reinforce to align those with the services they're receiving outside of school. And then we talk about early education. So there are a lot of early childhood development programs in California. These programs are for children from birth to age 12. They offer early learning and after-school services to babies, toddlers, children, preschool, and they're pre-K programs where children can learn to play together, work together, get academics. And so they get the real social skills. And so they help them with these skills up until, like I said, age 6. And it's one of the programs that really provide this early development for children in California. And then one of the things that I like to talk about is the California Partnership Academies. So this is a 3-year program in high school. And what it does is it goes from grades 10 through 12. And it's structured as a school within a school. So there are academies that are incorporated, integrated academic and career technical education. They have business partnerships, internships. So it provides these youth from grades 10 to 12 a 3-year program to identify a career path. Oftentimes we talk about a career ladder, and a career ladder oftentimes are used to go through college, but it has lattices. And so we talk about a person, a youth, they may not have that college career path. They may go the career technical education, trade school path, or another path. And so this is another opportunity to where we can identify those lattices or where they hop off their career ladder in education or in there and go a different route that's not necessarily the college route. And this is a great program because it's a 3-year program and it's structured within the school system. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Great, thank you, Michael. Make sure I'm unmuted here. Thank you, Michael. So Michael just shared with us some specific examples that help support our foster youth. So in this particular slide, we want to show how, kind of looking at it more at the macro level, what are some of those existing frameworks that help support our foster youth that don't just live within our lens in education, but also outside of education, like child welfare, probation, behavioral health, so on and so forth. So one particular system, and folks have already mentioned about it here, is the integrated core practice model. Of course, everybody in child welfare is aware of the integrated core practice model. However, if you were to ask a teacher what exactly is the ICPM, that might not be the case. They are going to be familiar with something called the multi-tiered systems of support, also known as MTSS. Both systems, though, are very much the same. They use different terminology, but essentially they have the same goal, right? Which is supporting the child holistically and trying to meet their needs. So one of the things that our department has been trying to do is trying to really kind of leverage both systems, understand the resources from both systems, and how can both systems kind of connect with each other and eventually try to integrate with each other. So our office and our department has been creating a work group in order to try to explore that a little bit more and try to make those connections so that we have some of those clear connections already built in. Because again, this work is not worked in silos. It's all within the sense of trying to help our foster youth. So we want to be able to share those resources, share what funding is available within education, but also outside of education, so that we can really truly create this wraparound service. And that's really the spirit of ICPM and MTSS. So with that said, I'm going to pass the mic to Stephanie, who is going to take us to the lens of probation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Anderson, the Probation Foster Care Specialist at CPOC. Just want to say, agree with everyone, as you can see, the importance of why we should be here today to look at cross-system collaboration. For us, it's very important in the work we do to assist youth and families in getting right supports and services they need for probation. Probation departments have a unique role because our infrastructure bridges the critical gaps between the courts and the communities we serve while partnering with others. We cover 4 main areas of services and resources in the juvenile probation system. For prevention, being proactive, we provide services typically tailored to individual needs and may be delivered in the schools, homes, or community settings. Probation also offers intervention services to reflect both diversity of populations that probation serves, as well as the needs of youth, with a focus on restorative justice and grounded in evidence-based practices. For youth who are ordered into foster care by the courts and under probation supervision, they may be placed with a resource family in a STRTP or other therapeutic services or settings if advised by a clinician. And for probation, secure juvenile facilities consist of juvenile halls, camps, secure youth treatment facilities for youth and young adults up to 25 years of age. There is a variety of programs and intervention services to support youth in each of these settings. Next slide, please. This chart provides some examples of the juvenile probation programs and services. Please note, this is not an exhaustive list, and we'll briefly skim through this due to the essence of time. So for prevention services under the first column, these services are focused on those who are at risk of entering in the juvenile justice system or who is engaged in low-level delinquent behavior. Many of these programs are provided by probation, our partner agencies, as well as community-based organizations. For intervention, these services are focused on youth who are court-involved and require supervision and intervention of a probation department. As part of intervention, youth and families are assessed, case plans are developed, and supervision and services are implemented with the intent to reduce recidivism. The next column we have here is foster care services. For these services are intended to support youth who cannot remain in their home due to various circumstances. Services are included in various foster care settings, such as home-based settings, as well as residential settings. These services focuses on specific needs of the youth with the goal of family reunification or successful transition into adulthood. And the last column we have here is secure juvenile facilities. Probation facilities include a variety of programs and services focusing on rehabilitation, education, health, and skill building. These facilities work closely with community partners to ensure youth receive necessary support during and after their time in detention. Next slide, please. The juvenile probation system does not function in isolation, as you can see. It collaborates with law enforcement, courts, public health, behavioral health, schools, child welfare agencies, nonprofit organizations, faith-based groups, and even more. This integration ensures that diverse needs of juveniles are met through a coordinated and holistic approach. Effective intervention depends on cross-system coordination and collaboration. And once again, as you can see, juvenile probation system's collaborative approach is necessary for our success and to ensure the success of youth to receive comprehensive and coordinated services that addresses their diverse needs and to assist with their transition back into the community. I will go ahead and pass it over to Leah Dempsey from Department of Developmental Services. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. Leah Dempsey from the Department of Developmental Services. I oversee our System of Care branch here. And for those of you who may not know, DDS is the state department who contracts with 21 regional centers throughout the state of California. They are community-based organizations who support individuals that are diagnosed with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And our developmental services system was founded and operates under the Lanterman Act, which is really focused on everything that we're discussing here today, which is keeping individuals at home, at school, in their communities, and reducing reliance on congregate settings. All children and youth, including those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, crave and deserve connection and belonging. And the regional center system is just one piece of the whole ecosystem that is charged with keeping kids, as Richard says, at home, in school, and out of trouble. We're all here today because we recognize that not one system can do it alone, and that every moment we don't reach out to a system partner or we refrain from sharing information with others, it's really the youth and families that go that much longer without necessary supports. All regional center staff are trained in person-centered planning, which really focuses on the wants and needs of individuals and families as the first step and then build out the supports and services from there. I don't have much time with you today, so I'm not going to go into too many service details, but thank you to Peter. He just dropped some links in the chat for the Association of Regional Center Agencies and our DDS website. There's a lookup tool where you can find the regional center in your area according to your zip code. There's also our system of care contact information for myself and my team here at the department, so please feel free to reach out if any support is needed. Also linked on this slide here, we have our system of care resource hub that's on our DDS website as well. It recently launched and there's a ton of resources and information on there. So please check it out. There's also the contact information for the system of care coordinators. There's at least one at every regional center. So these are your go-to folks if you need any linkages or connections. Or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them. Their primary role is to support children and youth in foster care or probation or at risk thereof, and they're doing a lot of prevention work as well. I really appreciate being able to share this space with you all today, and I'm looking forward to the two counties who will be discussing in much more detail about how operating as a single system and really developing those relationships and sharing information and identifying the needs of youth and families have really transformed the way they really show up for their communities. So with that, I'll pass it on to Jody from CBHDA.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Leah. Jody Langs from CBHDA. And the first thing I just really want to say is part of what I've really enjoyed about this process is also learning about our other systems and just kind of getting out of even the policy silos in our own associations and kind of areas of focus. So I think just overall what we're reflecting is similar to what we're encouraging and trying to facilitate on the ground. In terms of behavioral health, I'll give just a brief overview. I think the county examples are really what's most important. So overall, in terms of children and youth, behavioral health plans, provider arrange for specialty mental health services under the EPSDT benefit, which is part of Medicaid. There are also, additional funding streams, Behavioral Health Services Act and some other things, but EPSDT and specialty mental health are kind of the primary avenue that kids are accessing services. Youth with an open child welfare case and probation involved youth meet access criteria for specialty mental health just by default. So it gives a really, I think, key entry point into the system as youth are referred within 3 days of a child welfare case opening. One thing that's not on here is we also have partners in managed care that provide non-specialty mental health services. And one of those key, I think, sets of services for kids involved in system-involved youth is enhanced care management, which is another care coordination service that can be especially helpful for youth with complex medical needs. And let's see, I think just overall thinking about, I won't go through all of the services under the sun in behavioral health, and I know some of my colleagues, county partners on this call could give you a full exhaustive list. I think what's important is that they vary in scope and intensity, and it's really based on the child's needs. So it may be community-based case management, kind of lighter touch, up through, when psychiatric inpatient services are needed. I think one thing that's definitely in common, though, is that behavioral health services are kind of inherently relational. So in addition to building the relationship with the child and youth, thinking about the ecosystem of the family, schools, and community, and as Sarah said, the social environment and how those are impacted. And so I think just thinking about kind of in the long term and particularly in the context of foster care, how important coordination and collaboration is when, considering the statewide implementation of high fidelity wraparound, which is very centered on coordination, and excuse me, I think just the overall sort of vantage point that as Richard was talking about, that our systems are distinct but very connected. And when we think about, we all have our individual system outcome measures of various sorts. But if you look at overall child well-being as the ultimate measure, then none of the systems and everyone involved with them can do it alone. So with that, I will pass to my colleague Susan from CWDA.
Thank you so much, Jody. I'm Susan with CWDA. I'm the new Deputy Director of Child Welfare there. We represent all 58 counties. And one thing that really resonated with me today was the resources, responsibility, risk, and reward, because of that is a common theme that we often encounter. And most specifically at a meeting a few months ago that I attended on determining when do we start our clocks. This was related to implementation and when do all the different stakeholders start their trauma clock, or when do they start their program? Do we do it at detention? Do we do it at juris? Do we do it at the time of the removal? And of course, this led to very robust discussions because each system has its own center of gravity, and that's the center of gravity from which they operate. So for me, the sobering reminder is for the child removed from its home, that trauma clock starts from the time of removal. So our role in child welfare is to organize all stakeholders around one common goal, a common timeline, and to organize cross-system service delivery. Next slide, please. So the role of child welfare is collaboration, prevention, and outcome tracking. More specifically, what is needed and who provides the service? How can we prevent this from happening again, whatever happened to the family, so that the child does not return due to the same circumstances? And outcome tracking. What are the results of our initiatives? How can we tweak those initiatives? And how well are we doing in making sure that those initiatives are producing the intended targets? So for us, successful collaboration is creating transparency around our systems, the shared responsibility aspect as well, and flexibility in balancing different system priorities, because of each one of us comes to the table with our own set of guidelines, practices, and of course funding mechanisms, and that can sometimes create a lot of confusion and complexity. Next slide, please. So here's where we try to find our points of connection. We try to find shared visions and goals, joint governance, data sharing and case planning, cross-system delivery. Very often we meet in our child and family team meetings and wrap around, and that is sometimes the first time we are actually all at the table and are trying to identify what the needs are and who does it best. We also try and find points of connection with CQI and accountability, and also equity and family voice. And in each system, that is done differently. So we try to ensure that the point of connection is on how we best serve that child and the family. Next slide, please. So even within our system, there are different systems. We have front end, we have stabilization, we have permanency and transitions to adulthood. And the different systems within our systems remind us that there is the challenge because of within each of these bubbles, there is their own universe. And the own universe has its own language, it has its own priorities, and it has its own timelines. So in child welfare, the goal is to find a connection or to find a common place from which to operate so that we best serve that family and best serve that child, so that they are not aware of the conflicting priorities, or that it is not to their detriment, that we are trying to iron out competing priorities and timelines and deliverables at the expense of the family or of the child. Next slide, please. This also, of course, impacts some of our practice areas where we are continuously seeking cross-system alignment. As busy as the slide is also reflective, as busy at the busyness of all of the different programs, legislative frameworks, and tools that we have. To just provide a basic outline is we have several legislative frameworks. We have several specialized programs such as CSEC. We have several quality improvement initiatives and several assessment and planning tools that are continuously evolving and updating. And so one of our goals is to move this practice area out of the silos and into a common space where we can connect on a shared practice that impacts each of our stakeholders, so that we're not all creating our own practice area or framework, but that we are having a shared practice area and a shared framework that serves that family. So that is always a continuous goal of ours, and we hope to be moving that forward this year. And that is it for child welfare. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. I just want to say thank you so much to our system partners for expressing their commitment and their understanding of the broader landscape and the integration that each of their system partners are striving to do. Just thank you so much. I hope this feels sort of illuminating for folks on the phone, or on the Zoom call, just to understand that folks are really trying to see the entire landscape, and then opportunities there with initiatives like CYBHI and community schools. We heard a call to collaboration and partnerships. We heard a call to stand on values of ICPM. We've heard some encouragement today as cross-system teams, but I think the best part of our morning will now be hearing from the counties who are operationalizing those foundational principles, the leadership, integrative leadership that you will hear. So we asked 2 counties to each take turns, but tell us about a youth or child that they came across and the needs of that child, and then how the system partners, how the individuals in those systems stretched across kind of the barriers or the silos across the systems, but stretched across to really meet up and come very close to that child together, sharing in an assessment and an understanding and support process. So we're going to hear from Calaveras County and then Sacramento County, and they're just going to give us a little bit of a case review. Like, here's what happened, here's how we worked, and here's the youth now. So we're going to hear from each of them for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll bring everybody together, and Richard will facilitate some reflection questions. We'll ask some of them, some of those questions. You guys can put questions in the chat, and then we will conclude from there. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard to help us welcome Calaveras to the spotlight.
Thanks, Andrea. And without any further delay, Team Calaveras, Maylee Johnson, Tara Johnson from the respective Health and Human Services and Probation functions, parts of the ecosystem in Calaveras, joined by Christina Smith from the Office of Ed, and Rukaya Jones, who's the System of Care Coordinator at the Regional Center. We're going to talk about one of their experiences. And they're not really collaborative and integrated, but they're sharing a camera. Good morning or afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good
Thank
morning,
you,
everybody.
Yeah, we in Calaveras County are very much about playing on the same team. And as you can see, my team is at a conference right now. And so they're joining us via one camera, which is fantastic for sharing the work that we do and how we do it. Calaveras has a little bit of a different approach to our system of care work. And some of the things we're going to share with you are really focused on the prevention space and how we're utilizing our system of care as a way to deter families from entering the child welfare probation systems. And we really focus on all children in Calaveras, not just foster youth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christina Smith so she can explain kind of how our system works.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Smith. I'm the Director of Student Support Services at the County Office of Education. We house the care team at the county office. How that works is we employ a care team navigator. She receives referrals from our referral agents. Referral agents can be school counselors, they can be other agencies, members in the community. So her job is to kind of screen through referrals, make an assessment, and then we bring it to our care team. And that's where our navigator gets the family to the table, and we have every partner there imaginable that can help that family. And we try to work through that family story or what their barriers are, and come up with an outcome, come up with some action steps. And how we make this work is that our care team navigator holds our partner agencies accountable for their action steps. So that navigator is reaching out to everybody on the team, asking questions, asking follow-up, making sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to do on that action plan. The way we make this work is by committing time to each other. So we make sure we meet twice a month. We don't schedule over that. We hold that time as sacred with each other. We collaborate, we communicate, we do everything we can to work together for the sake of the family.
Thanks, Christina. So our care team is our really robust system of care. We call it the care team. And at our table, it's not just our 2083 required partners, but we include our public health teams, our self-sufficiency programs, our local community-based organizations, our CASA worker. We have a lot of people present there to be able to provide solutions. And so we had a family referred by a school counselor into our system of care, our care team, that was at really high risk. This family had a mom at home who was really struggling with her mental health, with some physical health, and she was just really in a state of overwhelm. She had 3 children, all with some behavior needs, and some really unsafe behaviors. And we were able to identify through that referral that they were missing some significant services around IEP, around in-home supportive services. There was a lot of violence happening in the home from one of the children with autism who was acting out against his siblings and his parents, and just it was a very high crisis situation for this family that could have very easily brought them to the attention of child welfare because of the dangers that were happening in the home. And so we really felt as a team that we needed to escalate this into care team. And we brought the family in to actually discuss the problems that were happening in the home to help us problem solve. I know that Susan mentioned our child and family team meetings. We operated those care team meetings very similar to a child and family team meeting. So we had mom bring her supports in, which was the grandma, who ended up being a really large part of our planning and our action planning. And we were able to really coordinate a lot of services. We stuck with this family. We met 5 times throughout the school year in order to ensure that mom was connected and supported, and that a plan was in place to help her really meet the needs of the children that she had in her care, and how to ensure that the schools were stepping in, that the regional centers were able to step in and provide supports. And it just really turned into a great interaction. And we were able, I think the most important thing to highlight, and Rakai can talk a little bit more about the specific outcomes for this family, but we were able to avoid child welfare intervention for these 3 kids who had significant needs that really would have, had they come into our system, it would have really set them up for failure. And I feel like it's just a really great story to highlight. So I will let Rakai go into some of the outcomes and the impacts that we were able to make.
Yeah, so what we did was, like Miley was saying, that we met over 5 times with this family, and each time we met, we found new needs and new resources that we could give them. So all of us together as a collective agency, we all worked together to figure out what services could we what services would make this family successful. And Regional Center, one of the youth was with with the regional center already. And so with that, we started giving more attention and more services to this one youth that needed that service because he was violent to his siblings. And so we wanted to make sure that he had ABA services in the home. And then he had maybe the mom was definitely having some mental issues, and she was physically having some problems as well. So we gave some additional respite, and the child was in the home and he'd like to be outside. He'd like to be in the community, and he'd love to jump. So we did a membership of a trampoline service that's in his county. And so the family was able to do that. He was, again, he liked music. And so we tried to make sure that he got some music lessons as well. So that was a social rec POS. And so what we tried to do was make sure that this child was, his needs were being met and he was in a safe environment. And mom was thinking of a temporary respite out of home or permanent. And so then again, we met again. And so we talked about maybe doing that, making sure that he had a place that was safe for him and his siblings, because his siblings were, again, not safe at the home. And so what we did was we had those discussions. She brought other family members in, and when she brought other family members in, they realized that maybe we could do this, and we were able to keep that family together. And I think that's one of the successful things that we were able to do, and we're very proud that now he's thriving. He's doing all those activities that he loves to do. And finances was a problem. And so we had our service coordinator actually help him with the information, with the in-home services support for applications. So she was able to get that additional finance relief as well. And so we tried to pull in all the resources. We talked to all the program managers and service coordinators, and then our agencies together combined, we all, with the mental health aspect as well, with the family, and helping the other kids that were actually in the home that was dealing with the situation where they got help as well. So we tried to treat the whole entire family, and it really worked.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Thank you, Team Calaveras. I'm struck by at least two things. One, when the family came to your attention, the legal obligation fell to one agency to try to serve this family. But you immediately realized that the family's complexity would require something bigger than that. And then in the course, as you described your interventions, I was counting off in my head the number of ICPM leadership principles on display. You ticked at least half a dozen of them, right? Highly individualized, collaborative, team-based. I heard Rukaya talk about the family bringing their natural supports in, right? So hopefully it's like super clear how Calaveras is walking the walk of system of care in its relationships, in its structure, and its function to meet people where they are and to meet the very specific needs of the individual. Beautiful, beautiful work, Team Calaveras. Love that. Fantastic. All right, we will come back to them in a moment or two after visiting with our friends from Sacramento County. Thanks for joining us, Stephanie and Catherine from the Department of Children, Family, and Adult Services. They're joined by Rhapsody Flores, who's a program planner with behavioral health, and Jennifer Bloom, who's the Director of Client Services at Alta California Regional Center. Really happy to welcome Sacramento in to tell us a story about their experiences with one of their young people.
Thank you. Stephanie got pulled away. So it's Rhapsody, Jennifer, and I. But I wanted to just bring to your attention a youth that we were working with. She was brought to our attention through child welfare. She was removed from her mother due to untreated substance use and anger management issues and physical abuse. And she was 14 years old. She had educational, intellectual, physical, mental health needs, and some physical conditions that were complex as well. She experienced placement instability and had multiple hospitalizations for suicidal ideation. She also frequently left placements, so we were constantly worried about her safety, and had prescribed medications for both medical and psychiatric conditions. She came to us with some services in place already, but collectively, we, CPS and behavioral health and Alta Regional, there were many other medical providers. CCS was also involved. She had an IEP through school for a non-public school setting, but she was never in school or in a certain district long enough to get that reevaluated. She had a CASA who actually ended up becoming a caregiver for a short period of time. And how we kind of pulled together, and Rhapsody and Jennifer can talk a little more about this, but we all pulled together to have weekly MDTs. If the child was wanting or willing or able to attend, then it was a CFT. But we collaborated weekly to provide the best supports possible for this youth to get her as stable as possible. Probation was also involved. And they aren't with us today, but they also provided some assistance in regards to when she was detained, that the orders were to release upon appropriate placement so that we could keep her as safe as possible until getting her placed in another setting. So Rhapsody and Jennifer, do you want to add to that?
Sure. This youth came to the attention of behavioral health. I was a liaison between behavioral health and CPS at the time. And so the youth came to my attention, and we knew that we needed to have additional supports put in place in regard to her mental health. Unfortunately, the youth was out of county. However, we were able to work with one of our wraparound providers in Sacramento County, who then traveled multiple times a week to go do wraparound services with the youth. Additionally, we brought in TBS, and so it was fortunately the same agency, and they were also able to travel and meet with the youth to do services while she was awaiting placement. And yes, as Kathy said, we continued to do MDTs and CFTs if the youth was wanting to attend. And I think the MDTs weekly were probably the biggest help with all of our communication and understanding that not one system had to carry the weight of what was going on, because there were so many variables involved in this child's care and needs. And Jennifer, I'll pass it over to you because I know Alta did a great deal of work as well.
Thank you, Rhapsody and Kathy. Yes. As you were talking, I was thinking about, you said this in not so many words, but we really all took responsibility for this youth. We didn't say, oh, she belongs here or in this quadrant or that. It was really just that no wrong door approach and mentality that served us so well. And I think over the course of those weekly MDTs and CFT meetings, as a team, we really grew to trust one another and feel confident and comfortable just calling and sometimes venting, sometimes, celebrating, just depending on what's happening, really identifying. We were just able to have that dialogue because we were so close knit after all of those weekly meetings. So it was myself and one of my colleagues, and then the assigned service coordinator who did an amazing job, often taking, joining a call, pulled over on the side of the road on her phone because she was driving from one visit to another. But that just really shows the commitment that we all had to continue to meet together. And those connections and that collaborative approach really helped us to secure stable care for her. It's not always been the case that things have been stable for this person. We are experiencing some struggles today, and we know that she's engaged. So she's still engaging with us. And I think that really is a tribute to and a testament to the collective work that we did together. She knows we care. And now she's an adult, so it's a little bit trickier in some ways because she is making the decisions, and our services at the regional center are voluntary. So we're doing everything we can to walk that line and keep her engaged without without making her feel like she's required to do so. It's really tricky.
Richard, you're on mute. I'd love to turn it back to you. And I wonder, Peter, if you could just start spotlighting. Let's bring Calaveras back as well right now so we can have both places there.
Really appreciate Team Sacramento. The persistence that you manifest with this young lady is just remarkable. Another system of care principle, right? And I'm struck by the experience you had and how this highlights for me one of the constructs we talked about early on was that the relationships of the organizations and with the young person have to matter more than the rules. What does the code say about how frequently you convene team meetings for a youth like this, right? It's not weekly, right? Something way less frequent than that. But the individual needs of this young person suggested that you meet way more frequently than that and mobilize resources. So just want to celebrate that. A super complicated situation, and you all responded remarkably well. We have a few minutes. Wonder if we could reflect, maybe begin, just put this question out to you all and just invite you and would also invite folks to drop questions into chat again if you're inclined. But was there a moment looking back when you realized that something had clicked for the system, when for this young person in particular, both Calaveras and Sacramento, when the team really got it? Or was there a critical function? You may have mentioned this already, but want to give you a chance to just re-reflect and highlight what was the most important function or the most important moment when it seemed to impact the way the young person engaged and was able to be served, or the family. Any thoughts about that?
I'm thinking about in Sacramento County, I think we had a turning point or a moment of celebration when the CASA worker stepped up and was willing to take this youth into her home, and really not knowing what that would look like. I mean, there were some rocky times, but the services that we were able to put in place to support her, and like you said, Richard, kind of bending the rules or twisting things just to make it fit. I think that for me is something that stands out as a successful moment, and just a different approach that we hadn't been successful with in the past. Something we talk about, like, oh, is there another person in this young person's life? I'm thinking, the non-related extended family member person. That's who that CASA worker was. And that was really successful.
Yeah. You as a team, you helped the young person almost develop and adapt a professional resource or a semi-professional resource into a natural resource. Really beautiful kind of wraparound centered work. Maylee, thoughts about a critical moment for you guys?
Yeah, I think for us in this situation, the critical moment was really almost similar to what Jennifer said. Like, we were able to bring this mom to our table with a big group of professionals and allowing her to just be vulnerable and share what her worries were and share what she's tried in a way that was really from a place of, we want to support you and we want to help you. And it was a little bit different, right? I'm from the child welfare space. And when we bring families in, sometimes they're a little hesitant to share struggles or hesitant to share things. And in that moment with all of those people, we didn't have to say, you don't fit this box, right? We were able to really come together as a team and say, we're going to help you, even though you don't fit the boxes. And that was really I think eye-opening for a lot of people was around yes, and so yes, you need help, and we're here to do it, whether you fit into a category or not, because then it became all of our family and not just one systems family. And it was really a great moment for our team. And this happened late in 2024. So it's been about a year since this family came before our team. But I think that this is so pivotal because now every family that comes before our team, it's not about like mainly is child welfare helping them, or is, the Office of Ed going to get our SELPA people in to help them. It's like, okay, this is our team. And I don't know if you caught it, Richard, but Rakaya actually, when she was explaining kind of the outcomes and what we do, she said our system, because we really changed the narrative from this family and this approach to really be like, this is our system now. And this is how we do this work. So I think it was just really pivotal in that moment to see it play out and to see the success coming from all of us coming together. So there wasn't just one agency that was responsible. Our care team was responsible, and we all came together.
You're developing mainly a culture of oneness, right? So that the departments and the teams that work within them recognize that it doesn't matter, right, which door the young person came in. We're going to mobilize on behalf of this kid. Can we explore that for a second? Because I think there's a critical thing here we want to connect specific to your experience in Calaveras. What does your MOU say? Not to put you on the spot, but I think you probably know about the CARES team. Like, is that CARES team function articulated in the MOU?
Yes, it's very clearly articulated in our MOU. So clearly, in fact, that it became part of our 8023 MOU. So the care team came first. So we had the care team established before 2083. And that was a lot of like when it came out, when 2083 became this thing, we needed to do the MOU. It wasn't as difficult for us because we were already working in this way. And we were able to just really bring in the care team to our 2083 work. So our care team became our interagency placement committee. It became our children's system of care advisory group. It became all of these other things because the spirit was already there. And so it very clearly outlines agency roles and responsibilities to the team. And that's why Christina was saying like that the time for those meetings is sacred. We will not schedule over them. And if any member of our team needs an emergency meeting because they have a really hard client, we will drop everything and go. And I think that we've really, part of our MOU talks about the importance of that and the importance of the time, and that this is a priority for all of us. And we really live that every single day.
I appreciate that. And because this is now in your system of care MOU, your ILT, every time they look at that MOU, they're reminded about the manifestation of their commitment to oneness by practicing CARES-based functionality. They're teaming at that interagency level for really tough kids. In your case, even before kids get into failed aspects of the system. Good, really fantastic.
Not that it's important to this group, but it may be. We've even expanded that into our adult services world for the families or for the adults, the adult population that's struggling through our APS and we have a whole nother, we call it, it's an interdisciplinary team. They don't have a fun name, but the principles are the same thing. So we're actually expanding it to our entire community, and it's having some really great results in the adult side too.
Yeah, thank you. Turning back to Sacramento for a moment, this young person had extraordinarily complicated comorbid conditions. It certainly can't be the norm that you're practicing this way for every kid in the system, but could you share a little bit for our attendees today about how your experience within the system of care and your collective desire to respond to young people with complexity has changed the way you function for a cohort of kids? Because this is not a one-off. This young lady's experience and the mobilization that you've described is not a one-off in Sacramento at this point. You've done this in other cases.
I think for me, it's when a case like this comes up, we automatically, we know we need to convene. We know we need to get together, and we know it's not going to feel awkward or like we're asking something of our partner that is unusual. I think it goes back to the taking responsibility for all youth and not just siloing them into, oh, that's behavioral health, that's probation, that's strictly regional center. It's just not that way. So those are my thoughts about that. I think it's really changed our come from place is, well, let me call Sacramento County.
Yeah. Jennifer, thank
Yeah, I think even recently, Jennifer, you guys had a kiddo that you wanted to talk about, right? That
Yes.
we were able to convene about. So
Yes.
I think our IPC work has kind of expanded to just build relationships and an understanding that we all have a role in all of these kids. And I think it's made it a lot easier recently for it not to feel like child welfare has to do it alone, and that we can reach out to behavioral health and Alta Regional and probation and kind of come together to see what each area can offer in regards to support for a child. So it has made it feel like there's been a shift. I think that it didn't always feel that way. And so I am definitely noticing that there's a shift that we can kind of convene together and come together to see what each area can offer in regards to supporting our youth. So.
You're experiencing less kind of collective resistance buying between departments about owning your kids, which is that culture change to oneness that is so critical to the vision of your function. I would just point out for attendees as well that within your system of care leadership body, you call it the advisory team in Sacramento County, there is a standing monthly agenda item now where the representative from DCFAS comes and says, this is the status of our complex care processes for our kids. So we know we have a challenge with kids and complexity in Sacramento County. This is what we've done this month. This is the progress we're making. This is where we stand. And the collective, the other partners kind of own that with them, right? So again, the connection between the structure of your system and the way the leadership team functions and the functionality of teaming on behalf of complex kids, right? Those things work in tandem. The conditions for being able to address the complexity are met at the leadership level. Fantastic work. Much appreciation to Calaveras and to Sacramento for joining and sharing their personal experiences with young people in their systems. Deep appreciation to you all. Thank you so much. I'm going to yield back to Laura.
Thanks, Richard. So we've heard today from our system of care partners about the wide range of services and supports available for children and youth. We also heard some powerful county stories about collaboration and action. And so we wanted to make sure that those resources don't just live in presentations or in individual conversations, but are organized in one place where anyone working with a child or youth can easily see different options that are available. And so we created what we're calling a system of care coordination tool. And this tool organizes placements and services for our highest needs youth, those who are most likely to touch the multiple systems that you've all heard from today, across those 5 systems of care. And so the goal is simple: to break down silos, to spark creative solutions, and to make it easier for staff across to learn from each other. And so with this tool, ILTs and direct services staff, or anyone that wants to access this tool, can search generally to understand another system's services and placement options, or drill down to identify specific options for an individual youth that you're working on in your county with your system of care partners. And so this cross-system tool will be available on our CFPIC website, along with other resources and links. We will send an email out to everyone here once it's live and available. We're just kind of finalizing some last-minute tweaks on the tool, but this will be available for all of you and your partners to use. And then we wanted to highlight a few upcoming events to support cross-system efforts and further enhance the work that you're all doing. So CFPIC does have some TA opportunities. Peter's dropping some flyers here in the chat. We have consultants that can go out, we can deploy to provide TA to you and your partners. They are former county ILT members, subject matter experts that have been doing great cross-system work across the state. And the TA can be tailored to fit your county team needs. And so we will drop a survey also in the chat. The survey serves a couple of purposes. One, if you can let us know how we're doing with our sessions today, give us some input, some feedback. We love to receive that. And then also in the survey is an opportunity for you to let us know if TA is something that you're interested in, and then we can reach out to you directly and help provide that. And then lastly, we have, starting in October 1st, every month we are going to have our community of practice. And so this, you can join leaders from Systems of Care, Whole Child, Whole Student initiatives, and California's Child and Family Ecosystem for a monthly 1-hour community of practice. Again, this is going to begin October 1st. It'll be every Wednesday, the beginning of the month, from 12 to 1. And Peter dropped that flyer in the chat also. We also have our next equipping a session in January. And so you can see here that we don't have a date yet, but we will send a flyer once we are able to finalize those dates. But it's really going to focus on building fiscal fundamentals, strengthening forecasting, leveraging funding streams, and then learning from examples again. Some of the feedback we have heard is people love to hear the county examples, the real examples that folks are dealing with on the ground. And so you're going to hear from our fiscal experts around real world cross-system partnerships and strategies, and then also how to apply cross-system fiscal thinking. So again, we will send a flyer once those dates are finalized. And then a couple of other opportunities out there, the Breaking Barriers Symposium, the registration will also be in the link. So this year you will explore how you can build stronger, more resilient systems to support California's children and youth. It will be in Sacramento on October 26th and 28th. And then there's also a FERS virtual convening that CWDA, CFPIC, Social Change Partners, Children and Now, in collaboration with CDSS, are hosting to provide enhanced FERS technical assistance to support FERS implementation. So again, that link there is in the chat. That will be on September 30th, virtually from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And so we just want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today and for the work that you're doing every day to support children, youth, and families. We hope that you heard something today that you can take back to your teams, your partners, your communities to strengthen our collective work. This presentation will be available on our website, so please share it with someone that you think should have been here today, or you wanted to be here today and they couldn't be here today. Cross-system collaboration takes all of us, and today's conversations are just one step in helping build those connections. So we are grateful for your commitment and look forward to continuing this work together. Thank you.